Viryajatraha Stireirangehi Shushruvanum Sastanubihi Vyashema Devahitayadayuhu Swasti na Indro Vrudashravaha Swasti na Pusha Vishvaveraha Swasti nastaksho arishtanemihi Swasti no brahaspatir dadatu Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.
Okay, so what we saw in the last class is that not only these objects and laws are born, but even what all the Vedic rituals, the religious disciplines, right? Oh, they won't shift.
The sun is
here.
on there.
What?
The sun is shining in the look. So
Okay.
it's much more comfortable.
Okay. So that means any Vedic rituals that you do, religious disciplines that you do, right? And also the meditations and Vedas, they are all within this universe, and they are all then, if they are within this universe, they are also within Brahman, right? So all the possibilities, what are these things doing? What are the Vedic rituals and religious disciplines? What are they doing for you?
Facilitating.
Help you.
Facilitating, exactly. Facilitating what? Self-growth. Excellent, right? It facilitates self-growth, it earns grace, because of which then you, so that means some things which are known to you, right? So for example, if you want to get something, that you have certain known needs, right? You have certain known needs. If you want to get into engineering college, you know that you have to study, you have to develop certain math skills, you have to have a good, work hard, certain known needs you have, but in spite of that, there is no guarantee that you get what you want. Similarly, for this knowledge, you can do many things to help yourself, but you still don't know, how much. So these means, these rituals and prayers are given as a possibility for you to enhance your chances. The Vedic prayers and Vedic rituals are very specific, which are mentioned in the Veda. But as Tobias said this morning, anybody can convert. I mean, you can create your own prayers, right? It's not like Ishvara only listens to Vedic prayers, right? So you can have your own prayer based on your needs. What is important in that prayer is what? Right? State your intentions and don't be shy of stating the intentions, just as you're not shy of saying, I want to become an engineer. Are you shy? Do you say Ishvara knows? No, right? So it's just common sense, right? Anything that you first need to know what you want, you need to work for it, and then for the unknown variables over which you have no control, here, because we know the presence of Ishvara and we know the presence of cause and effect relationship, we are actually adding one more cause, in form of a prayer, to help ourselves to increase the possibility and probability. Okay? So all these different things which are also given to you to increase your possibilities, and they are also within Brahman. Okay? So now, what? Now, suppose you have helped yourself to all these means, and also with this Paravidya, to know the nature of consciousness, then what can happen is what?
Avoidance of Paravidya.
see, Andre, even the language that I use, right, it is part of which Paravidya or Aparavidya? Right? So, I mean, I'm using English, and that is not Paravidya, right? So, by knowing English, otherwise you would know Brahman, right? So, so what happens is, see, all Aparavidya is actually very useful, right? Any logic you have learned in school, right? The language skills that you have learned in school, they are all going to help you, right? A certain emotional maturity that you have gained through life experiences, it's all going to help you. So these categories are, see, this is what I say, Paravidya will give you knowledge doesn't mean Aparavidya is useless, right? So Aparavidya has its own place, but by itself cannot give you knowledge. It's as simple as that. Yeah. So therefore, what happens is, you have to know this reality, and suppose you come to know this reality, and where then you will find Brahman. Where will you come to know Brahman? Where is the place? Where is it placed? Tell me. It's everywhere, but what is, okay, that's very good. Brahman is everywhere, but there is one which is what we call Upalabdhi Sthana. It's everywhere, but because it is not an object, it's not available. So there is only one place it is available to you now. And where is it? Excellent. Who said that? Excellent. Okay. Wonderful. Nihitam Guhaya. Very beautiful. Very nice expression. Okay? It's kind of, it is available in your buddhi, but if it was available in your buddhi, it should always be available. But it's hidden. Why is it hidden? So that means, even though this Brahman consciousness is everywhere, because it is not available to your eyes, because you cannot hear a sound of Brahman, you cannot taste Brahman, it's not available as an object. There is only one place in the universe where it is directly available to you. And where is it? In your buddhi, as what we call self-revealing I. Right? So that means this self-revealing I. Now the next question is, if it is self-revealing I, then I should always know it. Right? Then why don't I know it?
Because it's view.
It is real, and because it is real, what do this self-revealing I gets mixed up with what?
With the world and the body, mind.
Right? So it gets mixed up with body and mind. So that means, look at this, Vedanta is a means of knowledge. What is the means of knowledge? Through which you can come to know something, right? What just you need to understand clearly, because what are these words? The tradition calls them means of knowledge. What does it mean? If you want to see this cup, which means of knowledge will you use? Eyes, right? And these eyes, you can't replace, you can't say, oh, I want to see the cup today, let me use my nose. I mean, yes, you can see what is, suppose there is coffee here, you can use your nose to what? Smell the coffee. But to see this cup, you only can use what? Eyes. This is what we call appropriate means of knowledge. If you want to see the form, you need eyes. If you want to hear the sound, what is an appropriate means of knowledge? Ears. If you want to smell, the appropriate means of knowledge is nose, right? So that means, if you want to know the nature of I, you don't have, as I told you, your normal senses, right, can only see the objects, and because the nature of Atma is not an object, it's not available for your senses. So what is the means of knowledge? How then will you know the nature of Atma? It's self-revealing, but if it was self-revealing, everybody should know it all the time. But since it is veiled, as Guru is saying, so then what happens? We actually take it as body and mind, right? So that means if it is self-revealing, I should always know it. So it's true that I know I am. It's self-revealing. But what is the problem? Exactly, it gets mixed up, right? So now what you need to know is Veda, Upanishad is a means of knowledge. Understand? Upanishad is a means of knowledge, not to know that I am. Why? Because I am is self-revealing. It's the very fact that you constantly say I am this and I am that means you know the presence of I. Before you came to Vedanta, you knew I am. You don't need to discover from Vedanta Upanishad that you are. Right? So that means Vedanta is a means of knowledge, not to know that I am because it is self-revealing, as Leo says. It is a means of knowledge to what?
Nature of.
Excellent. Right?
The nature of I am.
Excellent. Right? So it is a means of knowledge to know the true nature of I am. And therefore, even though it is I am, it is as though hidden for me before I use Upanishad. And where is it hidden? In the mind. Because which is the function of the mind which acts as though it is I am? Ahankara. Superb. Right? It is hidden because my I am is in Ahankara, that function of the mind which I showed you, which connects me, my self-image to my body, my senses and different modes of mind. This is why it's there, it is self-revealing, but it's hidden. Yeah? So now, what does Vedanta do? It just uses the words to discriminate and make you see, hey, there is one part which is what? The mind and the body, and this I am is actually, which is self-revealing, is completely free from any limitation. And not only it says that, but it also says that this I am that I am feeling as though it's only my individual I am is actually what? It's the whole. Right? So it's not something which is like, otherwise see, so many people imagine that this self is something which is behind, which is looking at your mind and looking at your body. Then it will become what? Your individual consciousness, and yours is an individual consciousness, right? So this is what we call, there is only one consciousness, there are not many consciousnesses, right? So this is what the Upanishads reveal, and once you come to know that reality, what it says is, beautiful expression it uses, it says all the knots of your heart, all the knots of your mind, they all what? Disintegrate. Right? Because this whole equation, which is a million, it's an invaluable equation, is solved by the mind. All of a sudden, the whole knot, it's beautiful, the expression that it is used, right? That what? The knot of the mind is completely, it's like the last knot you have undone, right? So that means all the knots are all gone. And the second thing is what? It also uses Hridaya. What is Hridaya? Heart. That's a beautiful word. Why is Hridaya used and not just the knots of the mind? The Hridaya stands for what?
Emotion.
Exactly. It stands for all the emotional loads. It stands for all the feelings of smallness, feeling of whatever, helplessness, feeling of, all these feelings which are connected to this knowing yourself, avoid, lack, all these feelings, right, is completely undone because of the strength of knowledge. Okay, so that means this is what is the use of saying that is, it's not just a mind game, right? This Vedanta, even though it is fairly technical, right? It's not just a mind game, it requires a person who's a transformed person. And so there is one thing that you can do to prepare yourself, and that's why the mind has to solve it, because and the mind is, as I explained in the morning, is fraught with some emotional things, cognitive deficiencies, sometimes the unconscious, lack of even conscious memory, poor self-image. So all this you need to work on before the knowledge takes place, right? Reasonably, so that the knowledge can take place. But once the knowledge takes place, all these become what? Further? What?
We need to further work on them.
You may, but most of the time what happens is these loads, right, further get released, in the light of knowledge. It doesn't mean, please understand this very, very clearly, it doesn't mean that the mind becomes perfect. If you start thinking that my mind will become 100% perfect, it doesn't happen, because actually mind is only an instrument. It has to be sharp enough, it has to be clear enough, but it can, here there cannot be 100%. Where is the 100%? Exactly. Right? This is already free. This doesn't need to be free, it is attribute free. So now, until this knowledge clearly takes place, what happens is, a very common thing in Vedanta is, this mix-up continues. Suppose I say that Atma is free from any afflictions. It's a truth. Atma is never, right? You want to make mind completely free from what? Any suffering. That means you don't want an ounce of fear, you don't want an ounce of sorrow, you don't want an ounce of anger, right? Completely devoid of this, and at the level of mind, it is not totally possible. Yes, it has to, right? In order to know this reality, yes, it needs to largely get rid of its fears, largely, right?
Relatively or
Relatively.
More or less.
Relatively not get into depression. I mean, obviously, certainly not get into depressions, and also not be totally carried away by. But to think that if I know it, the nature of knowledge is such that what you know that I am doesn't depend upon the mind. It's a cause of the whole universe, right? So, but it also, you can't say I am is the cause of the universe, so therefore I'm not going to take care of my mind, because the mind is required to know it, and once the knowledge takes place, here there is a huge release, but here this is not what we call 100%. Why is it not 100%? You need to know also. Why? Because certain amount of fear is required. What does it mean?
It's surviving, like...
It's a survival mechanism, right? Suppose I don't know how to swim, and suppose I went to the lake today, right? And I go into the deep, and I don't know how to swim well, and I have no sense of fear. What will happen? You'll drown, right? So that means that if I don't know how to swim, my natural healthy mechanism will create fear. It's an indicator that I need help. And what do I need to do? I need to ask for help at that time, right? So this is it's a healthy mind which has certain fear. So that means this is what we call this fear, we don't call it as pratibhasika. It is Ishvara's mechanism to make you distinguish between, and it's a self-survival mechanism. So your aim is not to kind of totally eliminate this fear. So that means certain amount of fear is not only healthy, but it's necessary, and that's part of Ishvara's creation, right? Now, what are we trying to get rid of? There is something which we call psychological fear. This has got really not much to do with what is in front of you. There is an empirical reality about you not knowing how to swim, and you are in deep water and there is fear. And in fact, it's healthy and it's necessary, right? Because the situation calls for that, right? But suppose psychological fear means what? That, exactly. So that means that things have not yet happened, right? And suppose every day I think about, oh, what will happen to my old age, in my old age. See, what happens is, old age, it's true, it's uncertain. It's uncertain is a fact, right? But your mind only creates for something which is not totally known, scenarios of what? Fear. That is what we call what? Subjectivity. You need to take care of that, because it begins to look at life and look at situations with a given orientation, even though the external world doesn't necessarily call for it, right? Because the possibility is also that you will all be living in a beautiful ashram with multi-million dollars that Tobias has collected. So, right? And having a good time learning Vedanta, and going and swimming, right? I mean, who knows, right? It's all possibilities, right? When Barack Obama was born, he didn't know he was going to be president. I mean, much less Trump, right? So you never know what future brings you, right? So that means, and you only create what the scenarios of fear and something bad is going to happen to you. That needs to be taken care of. And how is it taken care of? Tell me, this vision of Vedanta, how does it help you to take care of that? Can you give me some ideas?
You have to look at input.
Yeah? Tobia? Okay, study.
You have to look at input, what's the actual situation.
Exactly. The more and more you begin to stay with the actual situation, then what happens is you're not totally eliminating fear also. Suppose you say, yeah, there is a possibility that I'll be out of resources in the old age, so now I'm going to enter into pension plan. Right? This is a very healthy thing, right? This possibility of running out in itself is also not bad, but you are able to take actions to create security. That's also a healthy action. But suppose you keep creating scenarios and you're paralyzed and you're doing nothing to help yourself, then that becomes what? Psychological fear, right? Now how do you, in addition to taking those measures to safeguard you against some risks and which are possible, right? What else do you need to do to get rid of psychological fears?
Gonna objectify them versus subjectively taking them personal, looking at what they are. Like this is occurring now, and inquiring why is this occurring, from what's the cause of this occurrence, versus subjectively taking it personally back onto me.
Yeah. So a little bit, what Andre is saying is a little bit looking into why this orientation that I have, right? Is that what you mean? Yeah. Yeah. So what causes this orientation? I have only, for things which are unknown, my mind only creates one scenario, where actually in reality multiple scenarios are possible, right? So that means there is something in your mind which only takes it and trying to little bit explore what it is and probably correct the stories, right? That's
Self-inquiry, yeah.
self-inquiry, right? And that's why you have to stay with those fears and actually little bit look into it rather than try to avoid it. And when you sort it out, I think you get a lot of understanding, and they begin to kind of, when you correct the stories, over a period of time, those emotions go away.
I was thinking of karma yoga also for the psychological fear or not?
Yeah, so yes or no, but you'll have to explain me how.
How? By saying I will do my best.
Yes.
I'm just doing everything I can,
Very good.
and the results are up to Ishvara.
Excellent. Right. So the minute you begin to understand that the results are anyway not in my hand ever. I never actually choose a result. I only have a choice over action, and the laws are infallible. This infallibility of laws, if you really understand, it will help you to overcome your fears. Because why? Because you begin to trust life. Very good. Yeah? You begin to trust life. The more and more you can trust, less and less is the fear. Yeah? But within that, you have to take your own actions, right? Not that I have trust and therefore I don't do anything, Ishvara will take care. But very good. The laws of Ishvara, there you say, hey, it's not like everything goes against me. That's not how the world is designed. Yeah? Very good. Very good. Tobias?
Yeah, it kind of fits to what you've said before. It's a part of karma yoga, but if I need to deal with an immediate fear, I can inquire, of course.
Yes.
But sometimes it's not possible because I'm overwhelmed by
Yes.
the emotion. So I can directly switch to the praying mood and hand it
Excellent.
over to...
Superb.
Yeah,
No,
it-
really use it. Don't undermine the power of prayers, right? So that means understanding see, there are so many things that you can do to get over your psychological fears. One is what? Self-inquiry. I mean, let's not call it self-inquiry. It means what? It's an inquiry into the causes of the fear and this
We
orientation.
call it objectification.
Objectification is a very vague word, Andre. What
It's
is
like you're not
objectification?
accepting it.
Because when it's subjective when it's not investigated, and when it's investigated, then it's objectified. That's what I
Oh, that's what you mean. Okay, so this particular, in Sanskrit, if you say, it's called shama. Shama means the processing of the emotion by looking at the causes, and so that you begin to understand where they are coming from. That particular thing is called shama. We don't necessarily call objectification, because objectification gives a connotation as though I'm objectifying my emotions, but it's more like sorting them out, right? In that way?
mean.
Yeah. So that's a good. So that means inquiring and sorting the emotions, getting insight into where they come from, what is an incorrect story, correcting it, all that it involves, right? The second one is what Gudrun said is what?
Gertrude.
Gudrun. What?
Gertrude.
Gertrude. Gertrude. This is the toughest name. Yeah. Gertrude.
Geertrude.
Oh my gosh. Heathrow.
Geertrude.
Heathrow.
Yeah.
Heathrow. Heathrow.
Gertrude in English, so that's
Gertrude,
also
right?
good.
Gertrude. Okay. So now what? Inquiry, and then what? The laws and the order. Karma yoga, but this aspect of karma yoga, right? Seeing the order, seeing the laws, seeing the infallibility in the laws, and then trusting. All this is implied. Yeah. So karma yoga actually brings this one aspect. It brings all of this. Okay. then as Tobias said very correctly, sometimes you're really so overwhelmed by emotions or fears or things like that, and you sometimes don't, before you get into this inquiry mode, at that time you're not even capable of it, right? And that time, yes, all these Vedanta seems like only a theory, right? It only seems like that because the intensity of emotion is, and this is what Surya was saying in meditation this morning, right? That where will you resort? So that is, this prayer is a very, very useful tool. Please use the prayers, yeah? It doesn't come to our mind, but it's a very important tool, yeah? And
it was I wanted to say the meditation was so beautiful to find a place where we can put all our emotions. No? You have done so.
Yeah, really. You know that the Swamiji used to use this: relax in the lap of Ishvara. You know, we are so tensed all the time, fighting the world. Swamiji used to say that you're like always ninja, always ready to fight the forces, right? The enemical forces. And then you just have to relax. That relaxation, I remember Anya's comment at the end of Witzenhausen. She said something which was beautiful, I'll never forget that. She says, I initially thought that relaxation was an outcome of some act, like Shavasana, right? Or pranayama, or something you do to relax. She says, this truth is so relaxing, right? It just puts you in a relaxed mode, not as a result of doing some specific act. Knowing this and knowing the presence of Ishvara and knowing that you are already free and knowing that all you have to just do is to prepare and remove the veils, you know this reality itself is a source of huge relaxation. Right? So this knowledge itself can really relax you. And yeah.
It's an underground feeling of being Advaita, ne? Dualität. Dualität, that I'm, and now the truth is we are one. It's not that I'm alone and I can ask for help. This is the second.
Exactly.
Takes off the pressure.
Takes off the pressure.
And
Right?
to ask,
Very deep fundamental pressures.
because we never learned really ask for help. Yeah? That there is.
Exactly. Right? So these are all the different ways. Yeah, Sandra.
What about proving yourself wrong? So for instance, you fear public speaking in front of people.
Yeah.
And then you decide, I will do it every week once. And you see that you are capable of doing it, so the fear will slightly...
Excellent. This is within your own effort, which are not about self-inquiry and all, but taking some very proactive steps in order to kind of overcome fear. So this is a very good example. So that means what your own efforts to overcome certain things that you have taken for granted about yourself. Suppose you have problem with public speaking, then what you first time you get up and you have to speak in front of everyone, what it could be very difficult, right? But you fight your own fears and say, okay, at the most what will happen? I'll forget, right? What I have to say. And then what will happen? People will laugh. Okay. I mean, in some ways, these big things that we create in, oh my God, people will laugh at. This is like the mind has created what? A huge scenario, and you're like really afraid of that scenario. And you actually need to counter it and say, okay, the worst case, what will happen? People will laugh, and so what? Right? I mean, okay, people will laugh, okay, there'll be a little bit of entertainment. Then what happens is that, you counter this particular, the mode is, taking it the opposite and then kind of, diffusing the pressure that we have created. This little bit is called Pratipaksha Bhavana. It's used in different contexts, but here you can use it like that. You are caught with this, you say, hey, you take a completely opposite scenario and then say, yeah, I can do it, and at the most what's going to happen, and so what? Right? So this is a nice and powerful thing, that you lose fear of these scenarios which create such a fear in you. Okay? So these are all the different things which are available from for you to get rid of your psychological fears. So this is what you do before knowledge takes place, right? Many things you can do with reference to the emotions. Suppose you have a problem with self-image, you need to take care of. How will you take care of self-image issues? Tell me. Inferiority complex and things like that.
To ask yourself, is this true, and up to what point is it true? For example, do I wear ugly clothes? Okay, then I can change something, yeah? Or only for, or don't have a nice haircut, or what?
Then go get a haircut, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Then
Exactly.
inform yourself, find out what is more beauty, or what.
Work out what's at the roots of that feeling. Exactly. I mean, little bit see where exactly this feeling of where is it coming from, and what is the source, and what is your own story about yourself, which in different situations you only keep putting yourself down, and you always think as though that the world is not treating you fairly, right? So that means, again, that requires a little bit of change of story, and so many things you have in your own within your own power to change this story, which gives you a healthy self-image. I just want to give you a very short example of that with reference to Swamiji. I really will never forget that. So I told somebody in the dinner table. So, I was this 22-year-old girl, and Swamiji was this big Swamiji, and I used to go and ask him some hundreds of questions which I had, because I had a curious mind, and he would always look at me so lovingly, and he would answer all my questions, and look at me and encourage me. And one day he told me that, oh, you're really smart. And what was my reaction? I said, no, Swamiji, where am I smart? And he said, why are you saying no?
And you were shocked, like.
Right. So he says, it's not to everybody I say it. If I say it to you, I really mean it. What is the need for you to deny your own smartness? Where is the need? He says, we think that it's called arrogance. When you say I'm smart, it sounds what? Arrogant. So he said, actually, accept that I'm smart and thank Ishvara for it. Because there are so many factors and so many people involved in making you smart, right? Your parents, the education opportunities they give you, your teachers who contributed to your cognitive skills, your colleagues. There are so many people who have played a role in your becoming little clever. And you can be thankful for them and thank Ishvara for giving you these opportunities to develop a given part of your brain, and this is how you begin to have healthy self-image. You're not you don't have to be, he used to always say, don't be falsely humble. Beautiful, right? So that means you own up your qualities, you own up your skills, you own up your beauty, you own up anything. Every gift that is given to you, you can own up. Then you start feeling good. At the same time, you're not arrogant, because you see the contribution of so many people and also some grace of Ishvara, that so many things came together to give you what you have. Okay? So these are the different ways in which you can take care of your psychological fear. Suppose you have problem with dharma. Understand, how would you take care of dharma problem?
Read the book Value of Values.
Very good. It's very wonderful. Really, it's true. What Stefan is saying is true. This book is an amazing book. I mean, I think everybody now in Bombay, I do some classes and we read this book together. So people initially tell me what they understand and then I add something else. And they said it's like the best thing that has happened to them in their life, really. This Value of Value books is just invaluable, right? So it just basically shows that by not following value, right? By not following value, how you lose. And nobody wants to be a loser, right? So that means this is a very natural way. If you want to help yourself, you are following values not to oblige Ishvara, not to oblige the society, not to oblige anybody else, but just, for your own self. Once you know that, I mean, there is nothing which will stop you from what? Following the values. You don't say, oh, this one is not doing it, oh, that system is like that. These are just excuses. You have a choice and you have to decide based on what you value. Right? So this is what the dharma also needs to be. And same thing, like suppose you are bored at work and you keep saying, oh, this is a bore. Then tell yourself, either I leave the job or I stay here and give my best, right? Otherwise what happens, you keep creating a mindset where you say, oh, people are stupid and this is stupid and that is stupid and I'm really great. But actually, nobody wants to work with this person who is always dissatisfied and always complaining and always thinks that I'm superior to everybody else. Actually, nobody likes a person like that to work with, right? Because you are telling a story, people are telling a totally different story about you. You think people are stupid, people think that you are impossible to work with. Right? So that means what is important is this Swadharma and all this becomes very, very important. We straighten out our thought processes. Christian asked me very nicely, what about things which are in the unconscious and so many things are there and you don't even know what to do about that. Right? Some unconscious things will keep surfacing, but so many, I mean, your unconscious is like one whole big ocean. Right? What all is there? Who knows? Right? So how would you take care of that?
Little by little.
Little by little. Wonderful. Right? Little by little. Things will surface and exactly. When it comes, exactly. Right? Just take care of it. And there are some prayers in the Vedic thing there are specific prayers which are called Prayaschit Karma. What is Prayaschit Karma? That you say, there are so many causes, so many things that I may have done, which are really in the past and I don't know what, right? That they are already done. I can't go back and repair them, right? So there is something which is called that I'm doing some actions now, and what is the result that I want from these actions, that to neutralize what I had done in the past. These are given a specific name and they are called Prayaschita Karma. So many people come to the ashram and do these type of things, Beautiful. Yeah? So that means for all of these, you can do many, many things before knowledge takes place. And once, suppose as a result of all of this working, the knowledge takes place, what further happens to this? Further resolves, right? Because the big thing is totally clear, all these further resolves, right? But at the same time, some of the things will certainly remain, and these empirical fears are necessary, they don't go away. Right? And once in a while some psychological fear can also come. It's not like no fear will exist. So I'll give you an example. We don't grow up with the pets in India. So I'm not used to dogs coming and jumping on me and the cats coming on my shoulder, and then so when they come I'm like this. So, right? So that doesn't mean, oh, I'm a wise, no, I don't want to declare I'm a wise, no. So it's not like, oh, this is something which is that's very natural and it's okay, it goes, right? And even if you have these little fears, it's not like detrimental to knowledge. Please don't make it all like, So this is what we see, that the knots of the heart and the knots of the mind, they are all cleared up. So that means from the time that you have this knowledge, there is a certain clarity, which never can be displaced by anything that exists. So, yeah, so this is what this avidya grantihi vikarita saumya, right? And that the whole knots which avidya, the ignorance creates, all these knots are dropped. Now, the next verse is further explaining it. Vidyate hridaya grantihi chidyate sarva samshaya kshiyante chasya karmani tasmin drishte paramare. Okay, so that means not only all the knots of the heart are solved and all the samshaya. What is samshaya? All the doubts, cognitive doubts. So the people also go to Swamiji and they ask, Swamiji, I understand the vision, but I have difficulty in retaining it. So what is the difficulty in retaining it? What does it mean? When I go out there and I have to deal with the world, then what? The equilibrium goes away and I'm back to being the small individual, right? So Swamiji says that is knowledge subject to memory? No. You have understood 2 plus 2 is equal to 4. Do you have to keep on repeating it? Oh, let me not forget 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, 2 plus 2. Do you have to have it actively in your memory all the time? No. No. Once it is understood forever. It's not subject to any time you want to retrieve it, it is available. Right? So that means, he says, if you have really understood, you will not ask this question of retention. You can never lose. Can you lose yourself after having understood? Then that's called not understanding. Right? So therefore, there is no such thing called losing yourself after you have, and it's not subject to memory. It's not like you have to keep actively reminding yourself, right? So that is all the samshaya, the doubts are all cleared. And what happens to your karma? That was your question. Get through. Okay, your question. What happens to the wise person? Right? We had talked about. Yeah? Okay. Few days ago. I remember. Yeah. So, the karma, as I told you, is what unseen results. That every action has 2 kinds of results, seen and unseen. The unseen results are not experienced immediately. Oh my God, I have more. Oh.
You can write bigger.
Okay. So now, the unseen results are called what? Adrishta phalam, and they are of 2 types. Of a good action is called what? Punya, and the other one is papa. Okay? Now, all these are stored. Where are they stored? Wow, all of you are perfect. Okay, so they are all stored in your Karana Sharira, And these are all the stored karmas together, all the punya papa are called sanchita karma. Chitta is collected and some is well collected. Means that not only the action is seen, but also the intention is seen. So as I told you, the act of giving, I have done act of giving, when the result is given, the result is given according to what I have done it for. Have I really, do I have only your well-being in my mind, or I have my own recognition in my mind, or I want to take advantage of you? Whatever your intention is, that is factored in when the results are collected. Yeah? So this is what we call sanchita karma. So that means the collection of all the different karmas that you have over so many different lifetimes. Right? Now, all of these cannot come into fructification in one lifetime. So, in one lifetime only one group of karma comes into fructification, right? Which gives you your body, your mind, and the general trajectory of your life. General patterns in your life. And this karma is called what?
Swadharma.
Prarabdha karma. Prarabdha karma. Arabdha means already started. Already started fructifying to give you the result. And pra means prakarshena arabdha. Okay, let me not get into that. What this means is, otherwise it becomes too much. Okay. What it means is a set of karma. This set of karma has to unfold over this lifetime. On the first day when the baby is born, all of these karma come into manifestation? No. Only just very little by little. Right? So that means the first day is only this much. The next day, one more. And this is why nobody knows what is to come tomorrow, next. Nobody knows. Right? What is yet to come. This is why we all run to astrologers.
But makes it sense? I mean, if you understand the value of it, okay. But if you're not clear about the astrologer, for example, he's also, covered in ignorance, and then he tries to read something. I mean, so what's the value? The side effect could be much bigger than the value at all.
I mean, it's true. So it's very true. No, I'm not recommending to go to astrologers, but it's true. I mean, this is a curiosity, right? It's curiosity, but it's true that astrologers are themselves kind of covered by their own ignorance. And it's true.
Maybe they have a bad day.
But
they give you a hard time for the rest of your life if you believe it, because you believe something imposing on your mind.
Yeah. That's so true. And this is why I think it's just, even if you go, whether you go or not, it's entirely up to you. It's not at all like something which you have to or not have to do. But suppose you go, then choose a good astrologer. Not just some Tom, Dick and Harry. And the second thing is that whatever he or she says, you can't take it 100% and you can't live your life by it. You have to only live your life by what you understand. These are just some inputs that you may have and that may, you may want to factor in a little bit, right? So that is important to recognize. The only thing is, what I'm saying is, what is to come tomorrow or next, nobody knows. Because from this prarabdha, day by day, what the things manifest. Right? So that means they all have a pattern. So this is the prakarshena arabdha. Now what happens is, when you have a human birth, while the situations arise, you not only have to experience it, you also have a choice in you responding, right? So when depending upon the choices that you make, you accrue new karmas, right? These are what we call agami karma. Agami karma means the karma that you have collected in this lifetime, as you have by the choices that you have made. Okay? Now at the end of your life, if you have not solved the problem of ignorance, what will happen to this agami karma?
Causal.
Exactly. They will go back to your causal body, they will go back to your sanchita karma, right? Because now, and then from this pool, something will again manifest, right? And give you another body and mind. Okay? So now, but if the knowledge has taken place, if you have understood that I am not this causal body and I am not the physical and subtle body, but I am awareness, consciousness, which has never performed any action in the first place, what happens to all this?
It collapses.
Okay, wonderful. So let's do one by one. This collapses, right? Immediately, because Surya gives an example that there is a bank account, but there is no account holder. So the
Like in the Swiss
account
bank.
is closed.
Nazi gold in the Swiss bank.
So that means the account is closed, right? Because it's no longer, there is nobody to claim that account, so the account is closed, right? So that means the sanchita karma is immediately, there is no gap between knowledge and closing of account, right? So the sanchita karma goes away completely, okay? What happens to agami karma? It stays.
No,
Agami?
no.
You don't
You are not more the doer, so it's not, you are not producing anything more.
Exactly. You are no longer the doer. So anything which is done, right, after the knowledge takes place, no matter how active you are, and you can be traveling around the world and doing, the talks or anything, right, it doesn't produce any karma. So that means, because the whole equation of, your understanding, there's a paradigm shift in your understanding of what Atma is, right? So therefore, this agami karma, from the time that the knowledge takes place, they also get, they don't get accrued anymore. Okay? Now, what about prarabdha karma? Prarabdha karma stays. If the prarabdha karma went away, what will happen? You will die immediately. So that means the prarabdha karma remains. Why does the prarabdha karma remain? Excellent. It has already started. So suppose, look, there is a nice analogy in the Upanishads that is given for that. Suppose a person releases an arrow. While the release is there, the person is there, right? After the arrow is released, the person gets cardiac arrest and the person dies. What happens to the arrow?
It still is going.
It still goes. It still goes because it's already released. Now it will stop when it is no longer dependent upon the person who has released it. It is dependent upon what?
The laws.
The laws. In this case, which laws? Gravity, how fast is the wind, the force with which it was released, so many other laws, right? So therefore, the prarabdha karma remains. Now, what is the purpose of this prarabdha karma? Twofold. One is, all these while, for janmas after janmas after janmas, we have lived as small, little, helpless individuals. Now, with this body and mind, for once we can what? Live with what? The vision of reality.
So we can become a tool or like a
Role model for so many people, right? And the second very big thing is, so you actually can enjoy this freedom, right? Fulfillment that you were searching for lifetimes, right?
Otherwise the chain would be broken.
Otherwise,
Parampara.
excellent. And the second reason is, suppose every wise person dies the minute the person knows who will be the teacher. Only the unwise, and you can imagine the big mess up, right? So therefore, the wise people play a very, very big role in what? Continuing the parampara.
Didn't you say that Jiva was finished when the knowledge takes place?
Yeah, so the
but
ignorance is
now
gone.
didn't you say you can enjoy it for lifetimes?
No, this life.
Oh, only this life.
Only this lifetime. Until this body goes. Just one, just the remaining. Yeah, but no more.
For the next life.
No, not lifetimes. Just this lifetime. Yeah, this lifetime, it's the result of the prarabdha karma. And what the person imparts the knowledge, and that is very critical for continuing this parampara, right? Somebody else gets it, and somebody else then gives it to somebody else. This is a very important instrument through which the lineage of teaching continues. Okay, so yeah.
Please repeat what it is exactly, the karma.
Prarabdha karma?
Yes, what it was exactly.
Okay, what is prarabdha karma?
The karma that we're starting this lifetime, for example.
Exactly. Among all the different karmas which are stored in your account, all of them cannot manifest because why? What is here is huge account, and a lifetime is how many years old, how many years, 80, 90, right? Everything cannot be exhausted. So whatever can be exhausted over 80, 90 years, only that much comes into manifestation. I mean, somebody can have 60, it's not 80, 90, I'm just saying, right? So whatever can exhaust in this lifetime. And that will start giving you experiences. And that experiences will continue. And this is why there is also no rule. There are many people who fantasize and they say, oh, wise people will have absolutely no troubles in life. Is it true? No. When were these prarabdha karmas collected? In times when the person, exactly, when the person didn't know. So there is no thing that only good karmas, there is no rule, right? So this is why it's possible that the wise person can get cancer. I mean, all this can happen. It's got nothing to do with your wisdom or not knowing, right? A lot of people ask this question, why do wise people suffer? I mean, suffer in the sense that why do they still have diseases and why do they still are subject to,
But it's again subjective. You are presupposing that the other person, you know how the other person feels. I mean,
exactly. Right? So that means that there is a certain physical pain is there, you can't be. That's what I'm saying. Here at the level of mind, it's not 100%. Please understand, right? And that is also very, very important to understand. But it is reason. I mean, it's more or less, very clean, clear, direct mind. But here there is no 100%. 100% is only. Yeah? Is it clear? Okay. So that means the prarabdha karma is what for a wise person also, even the wise person doesn't know what's to come, right? But it has what the wise person, he or she, has the maturity to deal with whatever comes with a certain clarity. Okay? So that is what this verse says. Now, the next verse is beautiful. It is just again talking about the nature of Atma. It says, Na tatra suryo bhati na chandra tarakam Neema vidyuto bhanti kuto yamagnihi Tameva bhantam anubhati sarvam Tasya bhasa sarvamidam vibhati. Beautiful. This is we do a aarti in the temple, and every evening and morning we chant this mantra, right? It's a beautiful mantra. It says that now it is talking from the standpoint of, now suppose somebody, it's talking from the standpoint of what the self, the consciousness. Okay, so it says, Na tatra suryo bhati. Can the sun can light up this object? Can the sun show you light up consciousness? No. It is because of the presence of consciousness that the sun can exist and shine. So, na tatra suryo bhati, na chandra and tarakam. Right? Nor moon and nor the stars. Nema vidyuto bhati kuto yamagnihi. Right? Even the flashy lightning can light up things, but can it light up the consciousness? No. So then this mantra is done generally in the temples, right? And therefore, when you do arati, in the arati in the temples, what do? You show a little lamp, so that there is a beautiful thing that you must know. If you go to South India, or mostly in South India, the temples are huge structures, and the real deity, sometimes you don't know where exactly is the deity, right? So you have to kind of little bit search for it, and you go and find one building where the main deity is. And as you go in, there are huge stone structures, so it already starts getting a little dark, right? And then you reach the deity, and the deity is what? It's a form in a black stone.
Black granite.
Black granite. So therefore, it's even less visible, right? So it's already dark, imagine, and the deity is in black granite stone, so you can hardly see it, right? So now the priest comes, and the priest has what? That light, the lamp. And the priest is showing you the entire deity. And while the priest is showing you entire deity, what are they chanting? Chanting this mantra. A, the sun cannot throw light on both Ishvara and consciousness, right? Neither the moon or the stars, nor the lighting. What is this little lamp going to do to what? Show you the nature of I. It is, in fact, it is because of which everything else shines. The sun shines after consciousness, the moon shines after consciousness, the stars shine after consciousness, the lighting, the very light, everything that is here is what we saw is shines after. There is only one thing which shines by itself. So therefore, don't search for consciousness in what either your experience or you can't stumble upon consciousness. Why? Because it's always there. There is one thing that you can't get rid of ever, and that is what? Consciousness. Why you can't get rid of? Because there is nothing other than consciousness. So therefore, we have to see that there is a certain relationship. I'm going to maybe do it. Yeah, okay. Let me go to the next verse and I will do what I want to do. So is it clear that it's a self-shining consciousness? Now we are moving to the next mantra, which is a very nice mantra where I want to show you something which I haven't shown you explicitly so far. Dva suparna sayuja sakhaya samanam vruksham parishasva jate tayoho anyam piplam swadu atti anashnan anyaha abhichakashiti. Very beautiful verse this is. This actually uses an imagery. What is the imagery? That it says there are two birds with beautiful wings that are born and always united. Both of them enjoy consciousness and perched on the same tree. Of them, one experiences the avidity, the karma phala, the other one goes on witnessing without experiencing any karma phala. This Lina, this word witness, so is used here. Yeah. So that means, what is this imagery trying to say? In one tree, there are two birds, right? And one bird is what? Experiencing the result of the action, while the other one is always free. What is this imagery telling you about yourself?
Before knowledge and after.
In some ways. Before knowledge. Huh?
There is a bhokta, the enjoyer of the fruits, and there's also actually the one who receives it in one person.
Exactly. Right now, in you, what you call you, there are as though two things. One is what? Body and mind, and the other thing is what? The consciousness. Wonderful. All are right here. So that means, but you don't, so there are two. One is this and the other one is this. This one is what? As Anna is saying what? Experiencing. And going through the experiences of pleasure and pain. And at the same time, there is this consciousness which is always there, which is what? Unchanging, remaining the same, never getting involved. Ever same, without any attributes. Uninvolved. Right? Right now. Now, what is important is that the knowledge, does it make this consciousness free from pleasure and pain? No. It is already free. Right? The knowledge only makes you see that it's already free. Right? So that means, yes, there is pleasure and pain. We are not denying the presence of pleasure and pain. But what is the locus of pleasure and pain? Your body and mind. Okay? So now, it may seem as though, oh, right now here, there are two things. One is body and mind, which is experiencing thing and going through pleasure and pain. And the other is consciousness, which is uninvolved, unchanging reality. So now, if you are really listening to me carefully or listening to this Upanishad carefully, you will have this question. How did two come in the vision of oneness? So that means you need to resolve it. This is why this vision of oneness, you can't have this plus this.
Is that where Ishmael comes in?
If you make that statement, Sterling, you have to certainly explain it. Okay, what would you...
Maya, potential is there, and then Maya manifests as Ishmael. Like you said, that the dream state is coming up. But it's all coming from consciousness because it's consciousness, the potential. Yeah.
Okay, he pretty much got it. Actually, I'm impressed. Yeah. I don't know if you understood it or not.
No.
Okay. So I will explain clearly. But what he's saying is right. So it seems as though there are two things here. One is the body and mind, and the other one is consciousness. If you begin to think like this, what you are constantly trying to do is what?
Separate.
Exactly. You are trying to stay here. I'm trying to stay here in being, and I'm trying to detach from this body and mind. Right? But the key Sterling has. Sterling doesn't have to do all these funny things because he knows. Even though he makes us laugh, he's like, really, here, he will, I tell you. Very smart. Okay. So what? This body and mind itself is not a second entity, this is what he's saying, other than consciousness. The relationship between body and mind and consciousness is an interesting relationship, and that is which relationship? Satya Mithya relationship. This Satya Mithya relationship, when did we use? Excellent. We had used it earlier with reference to gold and a bangle, and in that example, what was Satya? Gold. Gold was Satya and bangle was Mithya. Right? So why was bangle called Mithya?
Because without the gold it wouldn't depend.
Excellent. So if you take out the gold, right, the bangle cannot exist without gold. But can you say the gold cannot exist without bangle? No. But the gold can exist independently while this has a dependent reality. Okay. This relationship means if you count a gold, there is what? Only one, right? But if you count, if suppose there are 4 or 5 bangles, then if you count the form, there are many. But all these forms actually in the same relationship with gold. Each one of them depends upon gold, and gold is independent. So therefore, if you count the gold in a gold world, what? There is only one thing. But if you see the forms, there are many. Now, so this body and mind that we think that we are, which is independent of consciousness, now we have to see the relationship. This body that we think we are, if I begin to ask you, what exactly is this body? Can the body exist without these billions of cells? Right? So that means the body cannot exist if you take out all the cells from which the body is existing. Is there an entity called body? No. So that means the body entirely depends upon cells for its existence. Now these cells themselves depend upon what? Atoms. The atoms themselves depend upon
Subatomic particles.
subatomic particles.
which is basically like space.
Yeah, exactly. And after, he's a physicist, so now Matthias will tell us. After particle comes what?
The God party.
That is true. So that means then comes what? Quarks. How do you spell quarks? Q-U-A-R-K. Quarks. Okay? Then, after that?
Strings.
Strings. We have all these smart people here. Okay, strings.
Is this not a different theory?
Okay, these are all different. There itself, there is a disagreement, right? So string theory, what is, I've heard of string theory, but I don't know what it is about.
In 2-3 sentences.
No, there are no strings. I mean, not in this logic, there are no strings.
There are no strings, okay. So that means in this logic there are no strings. So we'll take what Matthias is saying. Okay. Okay, but one thing is for sure that at this level it already becomes what? Are there any like really tangible things that you see? It all becomes like, that's why it's all becoming a lot of mathematics, right? Because there are no corresponding tangible objects anymore. So that means here itself the picture begins to be very fuzzy, right? And then here, so it all actually reduces to some kind of a concept which is not even very tangible, and it's not even very quantifiable or very solid. Okay? So that means it's all a concept. Now, what we need to, now we need to understand one thing. So, this is where, and if you ask physicists further, they actually don't know, and there is so much disagreement, and in fact they don't even know. But what Vedanta says is that, from where this is an effect, whether you go here or you go here, you go whichever, even if you, in next few years, you can come to next 2 levels, right? One thing is true, that these are all effects, and the effects only can come from cause. You can't have an effect without a cause. Just because you are not able to find the cause doesn't mean that the cause doesn't exist. Right? So what Vedanta says, yes, there is a cause, but you can't find it because it is not, it is adrishyam. It is not an object which is the cause. It is, as Matthias is saying, what he uses is God particle, but there is this all intelligence. All intelligence is not available to you as all knowledge, all power. Is it available to you as one tiny little object? No. So that's why this itself, the tiniest of the tiniest, comes from intelligence.
Maybe we should tell those scientists in Switzerland, because they're wasting a lot of money trying to find something which is not findable. I mean.
Yes, exactly, which is not findable. So, Matthias, one more letter to write.
Well, starts to be.
Starts to be busy. Yeah.
I mean, you can't say that they are just spending useless money. I mean, a lot of this research results are useful for us. I mean,
yes,
much of the technology we're using are based on things that they have found out. But anyway, the term God particle, they use them themselves, because they know that they still miss
that miss.
The final
thing.
The final particle, they call it the God particle.
Yeah, but see,
but even this particle will not...
But it's not something which is, if you find that little thing you are trying to find, the intelligence is all pervasive, right? So that's why it's not. So what we say is that from this intelligence comes what? The tiniest of the tiny particles, right? Now, this, so that means the all intelligence is something which is the building block. It's not one given thing which is the building block, it is the all intelligence from which everything comes. So that means, suppose it manifests right now, what is known is quarks. Now the quarks organize in a certain way, which is again the work of intelligence. Please don't imagine intelligence like Swamiji always used to say, like a submarine, which is only down below. At every level of organization, intelligence exists. Right? So as Tobiya is saying, it organizes these quarks in a certain way. There comes what? Subatomic particles. The particles are organized again, in a way that there are atoms. The atoms get organized in a way that there are, in living being, there are cells. And the cells get organized in a way that it forms organs. And the organs organize in a very way that it forms body. So that means all the way there is what we call the work of what? Intelligence. This intelligence is what? All knowledge, all power, Ishvara. You understand? And this is exactly what he answered, by the way. You didn't realize it, but that was his answer. Okay.
I got what you told now, but I don't understand this mantra. I don't understand why there are two words if it says it's one. So I cannot get this example.
Yeah, because right now now suppose you start with what? I am the body and mind, right? Now the Vedanta shows you are not the body and mind, your consciousness, because of which the body and mind is seen. Now you say, oh, there are two things. One is body and mind, and the other one is consciousness. Now, what Vedanta is saying is, there are no two. There is only, actually, in reality, there is only one. It appears as two, but it is only one. Right? So the example is showing that one is free, one seems to be, but you can't take this example 100% literally, because otherwise it will become two. Right? So that means
they are always united.
They are always united. Exactly.
But what is the tree? What is the tree in this example?
The tree in this example can be the world where it is appearing, right? Yeah, it is the world. Surya, any other? The tree?
Would it be Ishvara's Drishti?
No.
The tree is, I think, in this
You have
world.
the book.
Huh?
You will have the book.
On
We will
this
look
earth.
tonight.
Yeah.
You have the book.
Because if one of the birds is consciousness, then how can there be the tree?
No, because
But the tree would be in one of the birds.
Because
then.
everything happens here.
No, because right now, see, consciousness is here and consciousness is everywhere else, right? So the example is trying to show that there is this bird and there are two parts of this bird. One is enjoying, one is not enjoying, and that is consciousness. But that consciousness is not only there, it's everywhere. Right? Yeah.
The logic at the end of this model here is a bit fuzzy for me, I think.
Which one?
Just the end. So we say when we get down to the quark level,
Yeah, or even further they are trying to figure out, because they can't really figure out. So suppose they are able to figure out in next to decades, suppose they are able to, still that will not be the final cause. The final cause is the intelligence.
Yeah, and that's what I kind of struggle with, is how we can prove that, can we, that it comes from the intelligence?
Yeah. See, this is why I'm saying, suppose I told you that it all comes from the intelligence, then you just have to take it. But suppose I show you that actually, even right now, this body, there are parts within parts within parts within parts. Each part is exhibiting so much intelligence. If I told you that it was only down below, then you have to believe it. But no matter which way you look at the organ, it is exhibiting intelligence. How it is organized, the function that it performs, how it coordinates with the other parts of the body. So the intelligence is something that you can't miss even now. You see what I mean? The other things reduce, but the intelligence remains, right? Whether you look at the organ level, there is intelligence which makes that organ function in a certain way. You go to cell level, there is also the intelligence which makes the cells organize in a way that it becomes that given organ. So that means the presence of intelligence is something which, if you were to think it's only down below, it will become only a belief. But if all the way in the organization you see nothing but intelligence, then that becomes very clear. Is it clear? So that means this is also Anvaya Vyatireka. Let's use Anvaya Vyatireka there. This form body that we thought has a dependent reality, it reduces to cell. When the cell is there, when the body is there, there is intelligence, all intelligence. Right? You see the whole body, there is so much intelligence. Now the body is reduced to cells. What happens to all intelligence? It is there, right? Because the cells are organized in in a very intricate manner to become this whole body. So all intelligence is there. All knowledge, all intelligence is the same word. The cells are gone. They are reduced to atoms. The all intelligence is
Same.
there, right? Now, the atoms are reduced to particles. All intelligence is there. The particles are reduced to what? Quarks. All intelligence is there. So that means an only concept, to a couple of more, all intelligence will be there. So these are what they get reduced. This remains the same. Is it clear?
So the intelligence is there at all levels.
At all levels, exactly.
It's not is there. There is only
The
intelligence, really speaking, at all levels. What you thought, for example, that the body is something which is an entity.
Tangible.
In fact, where is the body? You can say, what is the body? Okay, it seems that there is something which is solid, which is the body. In fact, it's made of cells. Then you say, oh, now I get the solid thing and the building block of what I call the body, which was not just a name. The real stuff is what? The cells. And cells is what? Is it also real stuff? It is only another name for which includes 1,000 names. It's only names. It's only a word. A word which has something which appears, but the stuff of this is what? Only knowledge. So when we say intelligence is at all levels, in fact there is only intelligence. There is no solid thing and plus something which is intelligence floating around. I think this is what you have to get. We are just thinking that there is solid thing, but there are only, in fact, really speaking, there is only intelligence. So how to assimilate that? So one very useful example is what? The dream. in a dream, what is appearing? There is a sun, there is a mountain, there are people, right? There are traffic lights, there is cafes, there is croissant, and so on. This is my dream. Now, look at that. You think that all this is really solid entities and so on, right? Now, let's examine what each of these things are made of. They are made of what? What is the stuff of which, in the dream, all these objects are made? Tell me.
Dream stuff.
Only the knowledge of you as a creator of the dream.
Yeah, exactly.
At the same time, is it like when we are within the dream, like really croissant and a cafe and a waiter and the sun and the terrace and so on, right? It is all only knowledge. Now imagine you are within the dream and you try to deconstruct and go like this. Okay? You take a croissant and you say, oh, we are within the dream. Let me see, what is this croissant made about? And again, you will say, what croissant is made of? What flour? Okay? Plus some butter. All this reduces to atoms and molecules and so on. But really speaking, is there something so tangible and solid as atoms and molecules? No. Only the knowledge of the dreamer which appears like that. You see that? Same here.
Okay, so that's a very good thing. So what Surya is saying is, this gets a name called quarks, which is actually a product of what? The intelligence coming together with the maybe beyond these quarks there is something, suppose, they're coming together and making this as though object called quark. Now this as though object called quark, what happened? Intelligence further organizes quarks to create yet another object. And what is that? As though. What? Particles. Then the particles which are then at every additional level of organization, it gets yet another name.
Just names.
They are just names which correspond to our forms. Ultimately, it is just nothing but intelligence. At every increasing level of organization, things begin to be more, they gain attributes and they begin to be more and more complex and more tangible. Is it clear?
Om Vishaya
Namaha. Okay. Anyway, yeah.
Maybe another way of looking at it. I mean, what the science does, what the physicists do. I mean, they're looking for laws, and they find laws, and they get subtler and subtler the laws. But the intelligence itself is beyond the laws.
It is from which the laws
that's why, and science can only look for laws and find laws. And they will certainly find more laws and smaller particles.
Exactly.
But intelligence itself is not. Yeah.
It's not something which is an object. That's why. See, science is, as I told you, it falls in. It is based on observation and a very sophisticated inference, right? Perception and inference. And all knowledge and all power is not available as an object in the world. That's why. Right? That's why you need to use, that's why Paravidya, another set of knowledge, right? Which makes you see this, and you cannot deny the presence of intelligence at any of these levels.
A question. Even the fact that at one point they only thought that the cells were the smallest particle, and then the atoms, and then the particles, and then the quarks.
Exactly.
Doesn't this prove that what they thought as a finality at one point became actually an effect?
Just a name.
Absolutely. It just became an effect. And this is why in Apara Vidya, if you remember, one theory can be negated by other theory over a period of time. That is a characteristic of Apara Vidya. Right? Yeah, she said something very beautiful. What she said is, at one point people thought that the final thing was self. Then somebody came and negated that and said, no, there is atoms. Then somebody again found particles, somebody then again found quarks, and then, you know, research is ongoing, and maybe in future you'll find couple more things, but they still will remain effects. Yeah.
So we can say that science is researching effects.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, the whole of science is because what is the cause? As you are saying, it is all knowledge and all power, which was in the potential before. That's the word you use, Maya. The potential, which then manifested as what? Ishvara, and all this, which is what we call Ishvara. Time, space, and all the different objects. So this is why this itself, this whole universe, if you can do this with body and mind, you can do it with one body and mind, you can do it with all bodies and mind and all the objects. So now what happens is there are no two. So yes, you're right. That the two is just two, is a provisional two, right? Because you can't start with one. Because why? You take yourself to be a body and mind, so you have to be taken to awareness. Then what you need to show is, hey, while awareness is independently existing, body and mind has a dependent existence. Then you reclaim body and mind as not independent reality. You understand that? So initially you have to start with two, but later on you can't stop. Yeah? Okay. So that means this whole thing goes into what? All intelligence and all knowledge. Now, that all knowledge and all intelligence itself is from where? Consciousness.
So Ishvara becomes an effect.
So that means Ishvara is, in some ways, yes, without consciousness there is no all knowledge and all power. The all knowledge and all power requires consciousness. Consciousness doesn't depend upon all knowledge and all power.
Why does it require?
Because, see, even, so we saw, see, without your little intelligence, you take your little intelligence, can you conceive? No, I don't mean your little intelligence, Stefan, I'm so sorry. It's all our individual, much better. Much better. Okay, that's a much nicer way. Thank you, let's not call our intelligence little intelligence. Let's call it individual intelligence. Totally agree. The individual intelligence, can it exist without consciousness? No. The precondition is consciousness, and then there is intelligence. Same thing, the magnitude of intelligence increases unimaginably more. All knowledge, all power, but the precondition, which is the presence of consciousness, that still remains. Right? So therefore, without, whether it is individual intelligence or all intelligence, it requires consciousness. Consciousness doesn't require intelligence for it to be. Okay, so this is why what you find everywhere is all knowledge, all power, all knowledge, all power, and wherever you find all knowledge, all power, all knowledge, all power, you will also find consciousness. This is why as I told you, you remember, on one hand you see this body and mind, which is this form. If I begin to use the words of Upanishads, I begin to see what? The intelligence which makes all my organs what they are. The organs themselves are again, because of intelligence, they are formed due to organization of cells. The cells themselves are formed because of organization of what? These atoms. Atoms themselves are formed because of organization of particles. So you see intelligence everywhere. Do you see that? So that means right now you see this body, which is a form, and you also see the presence of what? All intelligence. Right? Now, if I make you see what, that your mind is undergoing a change. Now your mind is also organized because through what? Highly complex coming together of neurons, right? With electrical connections, chemical connections. This is also a product of intelligence, right? Now that the mind is able to produce thoughts, and when you begin to see what is there which enables me to see these thoughts which are organized by all knowledge and all power through my creating my human brain, what is there is what? Consciousness, because of which I am able to see the rising thoughts which are an outcome of what? All these neurons ticking and all the chemical connections and all the electrical connections, right? So that means you also find consciousness. Everything that you need to understand is there right now. You don't need anything to believe, because whatever is there is right now there. So that means when you see with your eyes, you only see the forms. What two things you can't see is what? Not two things. You can't see all knowledge and all power, and what you can't see is what? Consciousness. And this is why you need Upanishads to show you that.
You see the effects of all knowledge, no problem. I mean,
you see the effects, but because you don't see, otherwise what happens is, everybody should know there is all knowledge and all power and it's everywhere. How many people know it? Right? So that means until somebody shows it, you don't see it. You only see the forms. Do you understand? So, yeah.
So, in fact, then we can say that the relationship that we are saying that Ishvara is an effect of consciousness, it's not really...
It's a kind of, I think we don't put it like that.
Consciousness is a cause.
Yeah, it's true. I mean, the final causeless cause is consciousness. But we don't put it like that. What we say is the whole universe, the words that we use is manifestation of Ishvara, and the truth of Ishvara is consciousness. And the truth of Ishvara is consciousness, and Ishvara is in the universe.
Yeah.
So that means wherever there is Ishvara, that's where the truth of Ishvara also is. Just like in the bangle, that gold, which is the truth of bangle, inheres. Right? Yeah. That's what we say. And this is why Ishvara is not confused about its own truth as being consciousness. But the one form doesn't know this reality. So this is why the form needs the help of Ishvara. Like we saw the first thing, every knowledge rests on Ishvara. That all knowledge, it's already there. We only remove weights. You remember the first class we saw? Put it all together, it all fits in.
So it's the grace of Ishvara because he's the only one who's able to do the job.
Excellent, excellent. The only key to this whole manifestation is with Ishvara. He's the only one who can do the job. Nobody else can do the job. That's why we need grace. Totally true. Okay? So that means through this teaching and through this teacher, Ishvara is showing you, hey, you and me are one. This is what it is. 7:50. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnam again. Om